My name is Natasha. I enrolled my 4-year-old daughter in school, and as soon as she came back, she saw me and said, "Mommy, today Daddy came to pick me up. I didn't come in the van today, Daddy dropped me home." Hearing this, the ground beneath me seemed to vanish, and my soul trembled because my husband had passed away 2 years ago. Exactly 2 years ago, he had a heart attack that caused his death. To uncover the truth, I checked the CCTV camera at the school gate, and what I saw left my eyes wide open in shock. Those dark shadows of my childhood are still alive in my eyes, as if every scene had cracked my heart. I can never forget anything, I remember everything clearly. Who can forget a painful past? Especially a time filled only with pain and suffering. When I was 15, my mother died. Our family had only 3 people, my father, my mother, and me. I was their beloved daughter. After me, my mother could not have any other children. My mother took great care of me, but suddenly her health deteriorated, and she left this world, leaving my father and me alone. Or maybe I should say she left me alone because after her death, my father remarried and found his companion, but I had no one. Tears came to my father's eyes when my mother died. At first, he loved me a lot and everything was fine, he used to sleep beside me. But that time too passed quickly because a few months later, I met a stranger woman. My father had remarried, and this stepmother entered our life. This new mother, my father's second wife, was all new to me. I remember clearly when she first entered our home, there was no love or affection for me in her eyes, as if I were a burden to her. She never looked at me with love, and this truth became clear with time. My father changed day by day, the love he once had for me shifted entirely to this woman. I silently watched as my father laughed with her, ate with her, spent nights in her room, while I curled up alone under my blanket. My mother never left me alone, but after her death, that place was taken by my father, and when he remarried, he completely abandoned me. My every demand, every wish, every tear became meaningless. My father's love was now only for this woman. When she gave birth to my father's second child, my status in the house became like that of a servant. She gave birth to a son within a year, and I did all the house chores, washing dishes, clothes, sweeping, even cooking. The stepmother also left her son under my care. I had to bathe him, stay awake all night to take care of him, and then do the entire housework during the day. This all became routine for me. The stepmother always had a strange smile, but when my father wasn't home, she made my life miserable. Her words pierced my heart like arrows, saying, "You are very unlucky, lost your mother, and we are pitying you and raising you, otherwise girls like you wander the streets." I was young and weak but silently endured these words. Once I tried to complain about her to my father, but she sat crying beside him and said, "Look, your daughter is accusing me falsely. She lies and needs to be controlled, otherwise, she will ruin our name." Seeing her cry, my father slapped me hard on the cheek and said, "Never bring complaints about her again. She does so much for you, takes care of you like a mother, yet you accuse her." From that day, a deep regret grew in my heart. School was my only support, where I could breathe peacefully for a few hours. Seeing girls like me laughing made my heart ache, but I consoled myself that one day I would become something, maybe my life would change. But that day never came. Now I was 17. One day while returning from school, some boys blocked my way and started making dirty and threatening remarks. I tried to move forward, but they stopped me. I was scared and trembling. No one was around when suddenly a voice said, "Hey, don't touch her, or I'll break your hand." It was David. He pushed the boys and stood in front of me, signaling me to hide behind him, and chased the boys away like they were trash. I kept looking at him, and when he turned toward me, there was something in his eyes that gave my heart peace. I looked down, but for the first time, my heart felt an unknown flutter. After that day, he often came my way during school time, sometimes greeting me from afar, sometimes standing in the shade looking at me. One day he finally asked me how I was. Maybe he was just looking for an excuse to talk, but once he started, he had to continue. Hesitantly, I replied, "I'm fine." He smiled and said, "You should keep smiling, you look very good when you smile." That day, I kept looking at myself in the mirror, wondering if a smile really suited me or if he was just teasing. But all of that became a dream because a few days later, my stepmother woke me up and said, "From today, you are not going to school. Get up quickly and do all the housework. Clothes need washing, dishes are piled up, and cooking is your responsibility. Forget studies. You have to do household work in another house, not study." When I tried to say something, she grabbed me by my hair and dragged me to the kitchen, saying, "You will cook dinner today." I cried but was forced to do all the work. When my father came home in the evening, he asked why I didn't go to school. Before I could say a word, my stepmother stepped forward and said, "Your daughter ran away and was roaming the streets. I caught her and brought her home." At first, my father glared at me and didn't listen. He didn't hear my side of the story at all and raised his hand against me without listening. And he believed his wife. Pulling my hair, he said, "Have some shame, you're my daughter and you're doing such things? Decent girls don't act like this. If I ever hear another complaint about you, I'll cut your hair off. There's no need for school anymore. Quit studying. This is your reality now, do housework." I sat silently crying, every dream inside me shattered. There was no love, no education, no light, and no peace at home. In my hands were utensils, and in my heart was a burden that kept growing heavier day by day. One evening, when I had gone out to buy vegetables, I ran into David. He asked, "Natasha, where have you been these days? Haven't seen you. Is everything okay?" I simply said, "Everything is fine." Seeing tears in my eyes, he wanted to say something, but I turned and walked away. After that day, I learned to survive. I didn't understand time anymore, but David became a hope for me. I used to smile quietly thinking about him, remembering him. He would often be at the street corner where the school path began, and now that I no longer went to school, he waited for me. One day, I gathered the courage and started going there myself. Maybe I wanted to convince my heart that not everything was over, that I could still breathe. He smiled when he saw me and said, "Natasha, this world is not made for girls like you, but we will shape this world for ourselves. Just keep holding my hand." And I really did hold his hand. Time passed, and our love turned 1 year old. David was 3 years older than me, he was 20. My stepmother still didn't know that when I left home for errands, I also met David, and our silent love was still thriving. We used to talk about little things, things true partners share. One day, he held my hand and said, "If I don't get you, I'll become just like this neighborhood." I laughed and said, "Then become like me." He became serious and promised, "I'll never leave you alone." He would take me to the park, we'd sit on benches, and he'd hold my fingers asking, "When will these hands be mine forever?" I used to laugh. Every meeting we dreamed a little more about our future. He said, "One day I'll have my own house, and you'll be in it." I kept smiling. "You'll keep laughing in that house just like this, and I'll keep looking at you. We'll have our little world with our children." I laughed and said, "And I'll be responsible for teaching our kids." He replied, "Then I'll cook for us." These were our dreams, where no fear, no poison of the world could touch us. But one day, the thing I always feared happened. David and I were sitting in the corner of the park, my head resting on his shoulder, and he was telling me like a movie hero how he wanted to start a small business. Suddenly, a loud slap hit my face. I looked up in shock. It was her, my stepmother. Her eyes were spitting fire. She grabbed my arm and pulled so hard I fell to the ground. She screamed, "Is this how we raised you? Sitting on the streets with boys, disgracing us? Get out, wretched girl." David stepped forward to say something, but she glared at him and said, "Boys like you mislead girls like her. Take her. We won't even let her corpse cross our doorstep." Her words melted into my ears like burning glass. Trembling, I followed her. She dragged me through the streets, telling everyone we passed, "Look at the shame of our family. This filthy girl we raised has become our disgrace." Back at home, she slammed the door shut and pushed me inside. My father was sitting on the sofa. Stepmother said, "Congratulations. Your beloved daughter is out having fun with boys." We were fools to keep her. Now either throw her out or throw us out. Without a word, my father hurled a slipper at me and screamed, "Get out of my house. I never thought you'd bring such disgrace. I don't even want to see your face." I sat on the floor crying. My stepmother grabbed my braid and shouted, "Now tell us, where all have you been going and who have you been meeting? We need to know everything." I screamed, "I didn't do anything. I just talked to him." She laughed and said, "So you talk to boys in parks with your head on their shoulders? People are right, when there's no mother, daughters go astray." I cried as David and his mother stood in our courtyard. Seeing them, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I ran to the roof. My stepmother glanced at them and said mockingly, "Oh sister, what brings you to our doorstep today?" David's mom gently said, "Sister, I'm David's mother. This is my son, David. I've come to ask for Natasha's hand in marriage. If you agree, we'd like to move forward." I was happy that David had shown courage and brought a proposal to my home with his mother. Before she could finish, my stepmother laughed and said, "Wow. A proposal? For this shameless girl we've caught holding hands in parks?" David's mom frowned and said, "Sister, you're misunderstanding. My son has told me everything. He said he wants to respect and marry Natasha." My stepmother's words were harsh. "Look, we're decent people. Your son lurks around our door every day." David raised his eyes and said, "Auntie, I love Natasha. We both agree, we just need your blessing." My stepmother snapped, "Enough nonsense. Boys like you don't love. You trap innocent girls. Natasha is naive, and you've fooled her." David's mother again spoke softly, "Sister, if our intentions were wrong, we wouldn't bring a proposal." Just then my father's voice echoed, "Enough. I've heard enough. Get out of my house. I won't let my daughter marry a street boy." As I stood on the rooftop, my hands trembled and my heart nearly stopped. My stepmother's voice echoed again as she warned, "And listen, if that boy's shadow even falls on Natasha again, we'll hand her over to the police." David glanced at me, my eyes were filled with tears. He held himself together, lowered his gaze, took his mother's hand, and walked toward the door. I couldn't come down, my feet felt stuck to the ground. My father's anger was sky high. As soon as he entered, he roared, "Natasha, you shameless girl. Where are you? Come out." It was as if I snapped back into reality and ran downstairs, trembling, yet sure I had done nothing wrong. I said, "Dad, please listen to me, I haven't done anything wrong." But the moment he saw me, he slapped me hard, the sound echoing loudly. My stepmother said, "You've dragged our honor through the mud. What did you lack that you had to roam around with boys?" With tears in my eyes, I said, "Dad, that was David. He sent a marriage proposal. He came to ask for my hand with respect." My stepmother immediately shouted, "Respect? Oh Natasha, there's a limit to shamelessness. After disgracing us in public, you now call it respect? When I saw you both sitting in the park today, I can't even express how ashamed I felt. You were wrapped in his arms. I wish I had died before seeing this day." That day, my father slammed his hand on the chair. As I was about to speak, he cut me off and shouted, "I don't want to hear another word from you. If that boy comes near this house again, remember, I will kill you." All I could hear echoing in my ears was, "You've disgraced me." I stood there silently, wanting to scream, to say everything, but my voice was lost and only my eyes poured tears. The next day, my stepmother called the matchmaker and said loudly, "Whatever it takes, finalize her match today. Black, lame, old, young, doesn't matter. I can't tolerate her tantrums anymore. She has shamed us. I can't keep her in this house any longer." The matchmaker looked at me and said, "The girl looks simple." My stepmother snorted and said, "Can someone who strolls in parks with boys look simple? Her mouth is shut, but her eyes and actions speak loudly." I sat with my head bowed as if my very existence had turned into a witness against me. 2 days later, a woman and a man came to our house. They were neighbors of Edward. They spoke about him, that he was a decent boy, an orphan, responsible and educated, had no bad habits, just poor and parentless. If you agree, we can do the wedding tomorrow, they said. My father looked at me for a moment and then at my stepmother, who immediately said, we have no objection. We accept the proposal. Get the wedding done quickly. I wanted to speak, but my voice choked. I went to my room, closed the door, and picked up a pen and an empty sheet of paper. Words flowed straight from my heart. David, today I'm giving you my last letter. Forgive me if my silence ever hurt you. I wanted to spend my life with you. I dreamed of us. But life is made of realities, not dreams. And the reality is, I now belong to someone else. You are a good person, even better, but my fate only wrote wounds for me. Pray for me, that the person I am going to marry gives me respect. I will always pray for you. Yours, Natasha. I folded the letter and gave it to our neighbor's daughter, Emily, and told her to somehow give it to David. On the wedding night, my eyes had cried so much that even the tears were tired. Wearing simple clothes, I saw him in the room. I sat quietly, eyes lowered. He came and sat in one corner. After a few moments, he said, I know your heart belongs elsewhere, maybe it still does. I don't want to force myself on someone's heart. I stayed quiet for a while, then said, Edward, I have accepted you with all my heart. Just give me some time to heal my wounds. I have no complaint against you, no resentment. I just need a little patience to gather my broken self. He gently said, I'm in no rush. You are my destiny, and I know how to be patient with my fate. For the first time, I saw love and respect for me in a man's eyes. There was no lust, no claims, only a silent trust, as if he was saying, I'll wait, Natasha, no matter how long, how many times. I won't make any claim without your consent. That was the moment when, for the first time, I thought that maybe every decision from above is for our own good. In the early days, I remained quiet, and he respected his limits, and I respected mine. But each day brought a new light. Edward's gentleness, the peace in his words, and how he listened without questioning, it all slowly started settling into my heart. One night, after dinner, I handed him a cup of tea and asked, Edward, have you ever felt alone? He looked at me with a slight smile and said, loneliness is felt when there's noise around but silence in your heart. I've always lived in that silence. I asked curiously, how? He said, I was raised in an orphanage. I don't even remember my parents' faces. When I was 5, I was left at the orphanage's gate. Even the name Edward was given to me by them. I looked at him with astonishment, like someone had torn open my heart. I softly asked, did you never try to find them? Never wished to know who your parents were? He stayed silent for a moment and then said, I was too young. By the time I gained consciousness, too much time had passed. Wishes were replaced by reality, and the reality was that there was no one to call mine. My hand trembled as I held the teacup. Looking down, I simply said, I know so little about you, but what I've learned today has earned you a big place in my heart. He lowered his eyes and gently said, I'm not great, Natasha. The more pain I endured, the more silent I became. The orphanage's ceiling was blue, but it felt as endless and merciless as the sky. There were friends, but every face was ordinary, every smile hollow, every heart had a hidden longing. I never tied expectations to anyone, because those who lose shadows in childhood become friends with the sun. For the first time, I saw tears in his eyes, tears that had been held back but were ready to flow like a silent storm. I placed my hand on his and said, You are not alone anymore, I'm with you. I'll give you that love and respect you've only imagined. He gently held my hand and said, That trust is my greatest treasure, Natasha. I have no complaints against you. I'll never force you to carry the weight of my past. If you wish to shape my condition, I will learn the art of living. I lowered my gaze and said that love doesn't happen with time, it happens with feelings. You honored me, understood my pain without words, and after that, the heart's inclination was natural. I wanted to be faithful to you, to fill your life with love, and to live like a prayer for you. In that moment, I didn't make any promises or take any vows, our hearts simply accepted that this bond was no longer just a relationship, but the beginning of a new journey that held love, trust, and a desire to unite two broken souls. We never realized when our love grew, it just did, like every feeling was reborn, every promise spoken, every night before sleep filled with conversations, that peace resting on the forehead, and the sparkle in the eyes each morning. Everything began to feel so tender, so complete, as if life had now settled into this very circle. And then, the following month, a happiness arrived that breathed new life into me. I was pregnant. The moment I learned this, it filled a quietness within me with joy. When David heard the news, he went silent for a moment and then rested his head in my lap, saying softly that it felt like his own breath had paused, from happiness, from fear, from disbelief. He said, "Natasha, now I don't just love you, I love both of you." During those days, he never let me go anywhere alone. Even when he went to work, he'd call repeatedly to ask if I'd eaten, if I was breathing properly. When I laughed, he would say, "Our child will be born to a smiling mother, not a weeping one." I'd ask, "Will it be a girl or a boy?" And he'd laugh and reply, "Whatever it is, it should be just like you, because you're their mother, and that alone is enough for my pride." In the 9th month, when I was taken to the hospital, he stayed by my side, holding my fingers, praying constantly for me. He said, "You know, Natasha, for the first time, I'm scared. I feel like I might lose something. I'm praying for both of your safety. Just stay safe." Then the moment arrived when my daughter took her first breath against my chest and David's tears began to fall continuously. He kissed my forehead and said, "This moment is unforgettable. I'll remember it forever, Natasha. I feel complete today." Everything was perfect. Life revolved within a circle filled with love, and within that circle were our shared dreams. But then, one night, he felt chest pain. He held his heart and said, "Natasha, something's pricking inside." Hearing that, I was terrified. I rushed him to the hospital. Throughout the drive, he kept holding my hand, saying, "Take care of our daughter, Natasha. Let her be strong like you. Let her see the world through fearless eyes. Don't wait for me." I cried, screamed, but his hand slipped from mine. And then came a silence that settled deep within me, one that perhaps would never leave. On the hospital's white bed, his lifeless body lay, but the grip of his love on my heart remained as firm as ever. A few days had passed, my tears hadn't even dried, when the phone rang. My stepmother's voice came from the other end. She said, "Heard your husband died. Don't dream of coming back here. We fulfilled our duty when we married you off. Now it's you and your child. Don't show us your face." I remained silent and thought, why would I go back? What remains for me there, where there were only accusations, and nothing more? Holding my daughter, Natasha, to my chest, I kept wondering where life would take me now, but I was sure of one thing: I would raise David's daughter into a woman who would never bow before anyone, who would look into eyes and speak her truth. Holding my daughter to my heart, I watched my world crumble before my eyes. In the beginning, I didn't understand anything. I didn't care about eating or dressing. I would just hold little Natasha and repeat David's final words, that our daughter should be strong like me. I kept telling myself, my daughter can't be weak, Natasha. This child cannot see you breaking. Over time, I gathered myself. I began washing my own clothes, cooking my meals. My daughter in my lap, I knocked on every door with pain in my heart and learned from people. I bought an old sewing machine and asked neighborhood women to give me their children's clothes to stitch. "I'll charge less and do good work," I said. In the beginning, 1 or 2 women came, one gave me a scarf to stitch, another a petticoat, someone else asked for a blouse. They'd say, "Natasha, your stitching is neat." I worked silently. Life's will moved like this. Day and night passed by the needle of the machine. I no longer felt the seasons. With dreams tangled in the thread of the sewing needle, 4 years went by. Natasha turned 4. I gathered courage and enrolled her in a nearby school. While filling out the admission form, my hands trembled. While writing the father's name, my eyes saw again the final image, his trembling hand and those last words, "Let our daughter be strong like you." I wiped my tears, submitted the form, and held Natasha's tiny hand, standing at the school gate. She looked up at me and said, "Mommy, I'll go to school every day, right?" I nodded and said, "Yes, daughter. You'll go every day. You'll study and grow." She said, "Then I'll work like you when I grow up." I kissed her and said, "No, Natasha, you won't become like your mother, you'll be even better. You won't need a sewing machine, you'll lift a pen and wear the robe of education." On her first day of school, I stood outside the door until her last period ended. She came out chirping with joy, saying, "Mommy, today the teacher gave me a star and said I'm a very smart girl." In my heart, I whispered, "Daughter, you became smart the moment you were born, when you gave your mother the courage to live again." At night, she would open her books and say, "Mommy, teach me this." Even with tired hands, I would come alive at her voice. Then it became a routine every morning. I'd get her ready, sit at the sewing machine. She'd go to school and come home to tell me stories of her day. One day, Natasha came home from school with a strange smile on her face. She took off her shoes and sat near me playfully. I turned off the machine and asked, "What's going on? Why is my daughter so happy today?" She whispered, "Mommy, do you know? Today, Daddy came to meet me." The thread reel dropped from my hand. My heartbeat stopped for a second. I panicked and asked, "What did you say?" She replied innocently, "Yes, Daddy came. He was standing near the school gate. When I came out at dismissal, he called out, 'Natasha, sweetheart,' and then came over to say I've grown so big and asked if I knew how to draw. I said no, and he said he'll teach me. I told him you'd be angry, and he said, 'No, baby, don't tell Mommy. It's our secret.'" Upon hearing that, I immediately grabbed her arm and asked, "Natasha, did he touch you, baby?" She laughed and said, "No, Mommy. He just talked to me." After a little while of talking, he left again. I was very disturbed, restless the whole day. The next morning, I went to school with Natasha and asked the guard standing at the gate if any unknown man comes here who talks to a child. He said, "No ma'am, no one like that comes. All children are picked up by their parents." "Who are you talking about?" I didn't respond and went straight into the principal's office. Opening the door, I said, "Ma'am, I'm Natasha's mother. I need to talk to you about something very important. Can you show me the CCTV footage of the school gate?" She looked at me with surprise and asked, "What happened, ma'am? Can you tell us your concern?" I took a deep breath and said, "My daughter is saying her dead father comes to meet her." The principal looked at me shocked and asked, "Dead father?" I said, "Yes, my husband passed away 4 years ago, and if some stranger is calling her daughter, then I want to know who it is. It's very difficult for me not knowing who this man is, following my daughter. What if he's a kidnapper?" She said, "All right, ma'am, we'll help you." She called the staff and pulled the footage from the previous day. As the video played, Natasha was seen exiting the gate, and then a male figure appeared in the corner of the camera. The moment I saw his face, my breath stopped, my eyes widened. It was none other than David, same face, same eyes, he hadn't changed at all. He bent down and said something to Natasha, then laughed and made a hand gesture. Natasha smiled and walked ahead, he bowed and stepped back. The next day, I arrived at the school before dismissal time and stood in the shadow behind the gate. As the school ended, children started coming out and then he appeared, standing a little distance away. As Natasha stepped out of the gate, he approached her and said, "Natasha, sweetheart." For a second my daughter paused, then walked forward. He was unaware of my presence. I shouted, "What are you going to teach my daughter?" "How to lie." He turned startled and looked at me, his eyes widened in shock. "Natalie, you?" I reached close to him. Natasha heard my voice and became scared. I tried everything to keep David away from my daughter, but Natasha's insistence, her requests, and David repeatedly showing up outside the school started wearing me down. One day I said to myself, if this man wants to meet my daughter, let's see how long and how often he shows up. That day, I took Natasha home without saying anything to him, but she kept meeting him afterward. David didn't give up. He came to school every day, sometimes with colors, sometimes chocolates and toys, and sometimes books Natasha liked. She was so happy, like she had regained some long-lost part of herself. I noticed he knew how to handle my daughter. He answered her innocent questions with love and care, understood her behavior. One day, Natasha said, Mom, Dad says if you allow, he wants to take us out for ice cream. I looked into my daughter's eyes, she was so happy. Being with David made her feel good, and she wasn't asking for permission, she was requesting. Seeing her innocent happiness, I said yes. The three of us sat on a bench in a park corner. Natasha had her favorite flavored ice cream, eating it messily. David pulled out tissues to clean her hands and then looked at me. His eyes carried no promises, just a question. I turned my face away. Then he said softly, Natalie, I want to talk to you. I replied, don't say anything that confuses Natasha. He bowed his head and said, I was there at your husband's funeral. I stood at the back but didn't have the courage to come forward. I just watched from afar, saw the peace on your face that you had finally found after enduring so much. I couldn't become your husband, couldn't be a part of your life. I looked at David in shock and said, do you realize what your return is doing to my life? Natasha has started calling you father, and I don't know when you'll disappear again. He immediately said, I haven't come to leave, Natalie. I want to stay with you forever. Take care of you and your daughter, for Natasha, for you, and for our love. I laughed and said, you never had the right to be anything in my life. I was pulled away from you. He said, but times have changed. I was weak then, a coward, scared of the world. But now I fear nothing, not even loss. Natasha interrupted, Mom, can we go to the park with Dad every day? My daughter always called him Dad because David had told her to, which is why she didn't say Uncle, but Dad. David smiled and said, Sweetheart, I am your dad. I love when you call me that. I immediately said, Sweetie, it's not that easy. Every emotion has limits, timing, and truth that cannot be ignored. David interrupted, and the truth is that we both made mistakes. You probably tolerated more, but now I've come with the intention to stay. I replied angrily, intentions aren't just words, they carry the burden of time, and not everyone can bear it. He said, if you support me, everything will be easier, everything will be possible. I looked at Natasha, who was now behind the bench searching for something, and said, I have only one condition. If you leave Natasha again, I will never forgive you. I kept avoiding myself, couldn't look in the mirror. Every thought, every behavior of David pulled me in one direction, and my conscience pulled me in another. One day I asked myself, is this wrong, and immediately answered, yes, maybe it is. Because I'm still a widow of someone else, and the man I was married to is gone now, but my loyalty attached to his name is still alive. But David's presence was slowly suffocating that loyalty. He was bringing a softness within me I hadn't felt in years. Every evening, he knocked on the door and said, Natalie, bring Natasha outside, let's go somewhere. And I would walk with him, using Natasha as the reason. One day I asked, do you feel sympathy for me or something else? He became serious and said, Natalie, sympathy is for children. I want to be with you. With you, every day, every moment. I firmly said, it's not easy, David. Every day I pray for the peace of my dead husband's soul, and in the evening, I sit drinking tea with you. So, what do you think, that all this is a small matter for me? He said, so are you doing all this out of compulsion? I fell silent. He pointed to my hand and said, I never held this hand first, Sheetal, you always reached out first. You don't need to fight yourself. I'm not forcing you. That night, I couldn't sleep at all, I just kept tossing and turning. Memories of my husband, his words, every moment spent with him, kept flashing like a movie around my eyes. Alongside, David's presence, his words, his silence, his help, the way he loved my daughter, Natasha, her laughter, all became part of that movie too. In the morning, as I looked outside the window, I asked myself, am I truly committing a great sin? Has my right to live life again been taken away? Natasha came to me, hugged me, and said, "Mom, Dad said he will have dinner with us today. Please, just once, tell him that you also want him to live with us." I looked at her face. There was a joy I hadn't seen in years, but also a conflict screaming inside me that I was doing something wrong. I picked her up and said, "Sweetheart, if someone's happiness hides someone else's pain, is that happiness truly real?" She replied, "Mom, if sharing one person's pain can bring happiness to 3 people, then isn't that true too?" I kissed her and took a deep breath. When David arrived, I looked at him. Just as he was about to speak, I said, "Sometimes, a traveler sitting at the door of the heart is turned away just because we think he's a guest, even though he came to stay." He replied, "And if that guest just sits there silently without knocking?" I said, "Then perhaps his heart is being insulted." He smiled and asked, "Sheetal, may I come in?" I paused for a moment and said, "Maybe it's too late now, because you've already come in. It's just taking me time to accept it." He didn't respond, just sat there, as if he had nowhere else to go. In my heart, I said to the soul of my husband, "I have fulfilled your rights. Maybe now, it's time for me to claim mine, the right to live, to smile, to feel all that I had suppressed for years." David was a very good man. He had established a successful business, but today he looked different. In the afternoon, when he returned, I asked, "Where were you for so long?" With his head lowered, he said, "Went to talk to the priest." I was surprised and asked, "About what?" After a pause, he replied, "I asked if marrying a widow is acceptable." My hands started trembling. I looked away and asked, "What did the priest say?" He gently said, "He said it's a very noble act. If you want to support someone who is alone, there's probably no greater virtue in the world. Whether a girl is a widow or unmarried, if she's alone, there's no better way to protect, support, and stand with her than through marriage." I stayed quiet for a while, couldn't say anything. My heart was uneasy, as if some long-closed door was about to open. Natasha was playing outside in the yard. Suddenly, she came and hugged me, saying, "Mom, you know what, I prayed to God to give me my dad back." I stroked her hair. She said, "Last night, I secretly told God that I want my dad back because you're always alone and have to do everything. But if Dad is with you, everything will be easier." Tears welled up in my eyes. David stood at the doorstep and said, "Natasha, if your mom agrees, can I really be your dad?" Natasha immediately said, "If Mom says yes, then I will pray every day that you never leave me." David promised my daughter, and swore, that he would never leave us, that he would always stay with us. I too silently wished in my heart, "I hope so." God hears even those prayers hidden deep inside the heart. Perhaps today was that day. The next day, David and I got married in a small, quiet ceremony at a church. David took vows before God that he would protect his wife and daughter for life and give them endless love. My heart whispered that I would do the same. A new chapter of life had begun. Natasha clapped with joy, saying, "Our daddy came back into our life," and added, "Now I'll have to pray every day that Daddy never goes away again." David lifted her in his arms and said, "Your prayers will be answered every day, sweetheart. Now the 3 of us will always stay together." That moment, for the first time, I felt like life had held my hand again, firmly, safely, and with a fragrance of trust. The guilt I once felt disappeared. I used to think I was being unfaithful to my late husband, but my daughter's happiness lay in this very truth. David took me and my daughter to his home. We now live there happily. My daughter has never been as joyful as she is with David. She needed a father's name and a father's love, and she got that with David. Friends, I hope you liked our story. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you get the next update first.